G'day fans, and we're back one last time to discuss the old Book of Boba Fett. It's the chapter 7, the last episode of the entire series, or the season at least. Very exciting stuff, and with me I've got a very hot and sweaty, for all the wrong reasons, Mr. Aaron. How you going tonight, old son?
Good. I just explained the spare room I am in is like a sauna, so bad that I have got a cold gel pack down my back so I don't disintegrate into a puddle on the floor. But apart from that, I'm fine.
Yeah, so if you're wondering, fans, he is actually basting in his own juices, which is particularly groovy. Gavin's already called you Doc Aaron. I love that. So he's not a Doc Ock, he's a Doc Aaron, which is absolutely fantastic. And he's called me Master Dags. Oh, yeah, okay. Make of that any way you want. So all very groovy. All right, so tonight we're discussing the final episode 7 of the Book of Boba Fett. Now, the most important thing about today, of course, is not the fact that our show is on. It's the fact that it's Valentine's Day, right? How good is that? Now, I don't know about you out there, but what do I love the most on Valentine's Day? And it's not my love for the fans or this series or even Aaron for that matter. My love is all about talking about bloody Star Wars, mate. You can't knock chatting about the old galaxy far, far away. Would you agree with me, Mr. Aaron?
My love is food, but Star Wars is a close second. I chucked a roast in just as we started, so it should be ready just as we finished. How's that?
Lovely. So there you go. So we're talking about we all love talking about Star Wars, and tonight is we're going to be discussing the old last episode in the name of honor, which is particularly groovy. And so there's a lot of things going on about this episode, and there's a lot of things that surprised me actually when I first read about what fans' thoughts were. And what are your thoughts, Mr. Aaron? Before we get as always, we've got spoilers, so I've got to put the spoiler thing in for those who don't know. Mr. Aaron, give us your thoughts quickly on 3 words or less on what you thought of Chapter 7.
There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, that's more than 3 words. But I get your point. And the interesting thing is that you're right. It is a long episode. There was a kitchen sink thing. They just chucked in absolutely everything except one thing they didn't chuck in, and we'll discuss that as time goes on. You wanted to say something?
Let's face it. It was probably an 8-episode series because this was a double-length episode, really, wasn't it?
It probably could have been, but clearly it wasn't. The thing that I found interesting is when I read after I watched the episode, I like seeing what the fan reactions are. Now, as we know from the past 2 episodes, especially the one, episode 5, you know, when Din meets the armor and gets his ship built and all the rest. The gush fest was just obscene, right? They're just like it was the greatest thing in the entire universe. Then you had last week, you know, with Luke and Grogu and all the rest of it. And some fans are going, oh, okay, I don't know where we're going with this, but I'm loving it. It's all great and it's all wonderful. Then this episode comes out, and I was actually surprised to read that a lot of fans were not happy with it. Right? They actually put it down. They thought it didn't work at all. And it wasn't just one person. There was a whole lot of people. And I thought, I wonder what's caused this upset, because, you know, with everything all chucked in and it's all great and exciting and it's got a lot of things going on, I thought the fans would have just gone crazy over it, but it wasn't the case at all. And there's one quote that I want to bring up, and we are going to touch on this a little bit later on. Now, I didn't write this. Someone else wrote this, right? And once again, I read this and I thought, that's a very interesting observation. So the quote was, if you can read that, I didn't have high hopes for the Boba crime lord story anymore, because remember in the past few episodes they've lost interest in it, but I was completely blindsided by them, i.e. Disney/Lucasfilm, ruining The Mandalorian as well. I thought, well, I certainly didn't see that one coming. So we will touch on it a bit further on, but what are your thoughts to that reaction, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I don't think they ruined The Mandalorian. I don't think anything close to that. It is interesting, though, that before we get into specifics of the episode, because I work in a shop, I get direct feedback from the public, from people who love it and hate it. And this week was a week, or the last week has been, I loved this bit, I loved this bit, I loved this bit, but it wasn't a good episode, which is really, really weird, isn't it?
Yes, and that is, I think, is the key thing, that it's a lot of flash and dazzle, but whether it worked from a substance point of view, I don't know. And we will have to sort of pick it apart as we go into it. So the key thing is we will sort of just analyze this episode bit by bit as we go along. And as you said, there's a lot to cover off. So some of these things I'm just going to jump over. But there's one area I'm going to stop, and that's where we're going to highlight the whole what's happened to the good old Mandalorian. So first things first, right? So after 2 previous episodes where we've been like in the middle of absolute freaking nowhere, suddenly it's like, oh, we're back to good old Mos Espa. You know, that's what I thought at the bottom there. It's like, we're going home. In this case, we've come home. So I thought, okay, it's almost like if you drop the last 2 episodes, forgot them all together, and just joined this one with the end of episode 4, suddenly it all matches up. But yes, we did return to Mos Espa, which was particularly groovy. And I thought, of course, as we saw last week, the Sanctuary Cantina got blown up. And I thought this was an interesting shot. I thought, hang on, where's all the crime scene tape and all the CSI guys and investigating what had happened? And I thought, oh, mate, the place has just been abandoned. There's no one around. It's just been deserted. So
I think on Tatooine, they just leave it. The Jawas come along and barbecue the bodies, and that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, now, last week you actually asked why would the Pike Syndicate blow up the Sanctuary Cantina, and it was only after the episode finished. And I thought, Fred, the obvious answer is obvious. It's because they know that Boba Fett was the Damo, that word I can't even remember. He was in charge of the Sanctuary Cantina to look after it. So what better way to say, oh, look, you're actually weak at your job by destroying something that you're meant to be protecting? Because you remember early on in the series, he said, you're now your overlord. That's the reason why I got all the money in the helmet and all sort of things. So that's the reason why I think they did it. So it was like the Sanctuary Cantina was a victim of just being connected to Boba Fett. They themselves didn't actually do anything.
Yeah. I think in this episode as well, when they were talking, they said they wanted to do something to draw Boba Fett out as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So there you go. Very, very good. So this is. I'm just going to chuck a joke in there. I couldn't help myself because you see the destroyed place. I thought, geez, that must have been one hell of a party. Which no bodies, just a lot of damage. But I thought that was kind of funny. And of course, we got a lot of exposition going on here. And finally, we get to see good old Din and Boba back together again, working out what they're going to do and what's happening. And there's a couple of things that I picked up from this entire sequence that really intrigued me. There's a whole thing about the spice trade. Okay, that's going on, and these guys want to stop it. But Fennec actually supported it, saying there's a lot of income that comes from the spice trade. And it's not really clear as to whether the spice trade is a good thing or a bad thing. And it's like a narcotic, but it's not like treated as such. It's not like they're transporting cocaine or something. So how do you interpret all that?
Well, this is the thing I think the series is actually missing. It hasn't shown you the consequences of spice being a bad thing, that sets up the whole reason why people would be against it. Tatooine still looks exactly the same as the Tatooine we've always known. It's just there's some gangs warring. If there was earlier in the episode, early in the series, where maybe instead of the mod squad, you had a look at the effects of spice and it caused robbery and murder and all of this, and it went through the whole of society from addicts and stuff, then you can understand, the position they're coming from. But because all we've seen is a couple of boxes of sand that glitters when it blows away, there isn't really the high stakes you could expect from, a narcotic being sold for millions of dollars. And I don't know if it's because Disney can't show drugs. That's
a very good point. There's a comment from Christy. I'll get to that in a sec. There's a very good point. They could have, if they had shown people in Mos Espa who were clearly impacted by spice and they're like, they're dependent and they're like the druggies, if you will. And Boba Fett says, I've got to clean this up because that looks really, really bad. We've got to try and fix this city. Then you have a motivation for doing what he's doing. But you're right, because we don't see any of that. And you're right. I think Disney / Lucasfilm are hesitant to show that. That's probably why. So there's a real gap there missing, saying, well, the spice trade is a bad thing, but why is it a bad thing? So
here's a question. Do we actually know the effects of what spice does in the Star Wars canon? They've never.
Not that I'm aware of, unless it's in a comic or a cartoon or whatever. A comic or a book or something. I've never seen it on screen because it's never been referenced before. Spice has just been a throwaway line. Only in this series they've made a really big deal of it. So if it is meant to be a narcotic that's really bad for people, they needed to show that, and they kind of didn't. But anyway, we sort of move on. So Christy made a mention about the blowing up the cantina. She thought it was because the cantina was changeable in their loyalties. It certainly was possible.
Yeah.
But as we discussed last week, it seemed unusual that the Pike should blow it up. And as Aaron said, it's like, well, what was the motivation for that? And maybe this was the motivation. So in any event, up she went in smoke, and that was that. I like that because you got the spice tray, you got the Spice Girls. Yeah, exactly right. That's an ultimate gag, isn't it, really? Spice Girls are backup singers. Oh, okay. Kevin's got it right. Yeah, the Spice Girls are up for the backup singers for Max Rebo. Well, yeah, he's looking for a new gig now. So there you go. Now, one of the things that we've been critical of in this series is the fact that Boba Fett, by and large, has not really been a leader. He's always been spoken down to by just about everybody. He has an idea, someone else has an idea, and for whatever reason, they sort of get the upper hand, and he just does what they do. Couldn't believe it. Now, even I had to think this, right? In this sequence, right? Fett says, we're going back to the palace, right? It's more protective, it's armored and the whole thingo. And good old Scad says, nah, don't go to the palace, stay here, right? And what does Fett say? All right, we'll stay here. I was like, dude, grow a pair and go, no scared. We're going back to the palace. I'm in charge. And then they stayed there. And I thought, yeah, righto, whatever. What do you reckon?
I thought the whole scene was really strange and structured really badly. I think because they spent 2 episodes not on Boba Fett, we had Fennec Shand give like about 3 solid minutes of exposition of what was happening and what their plans were and everything. And then Boba Fett was only reacting to things that were going on around him. He wasn't actually driving the scene. And I thought at this point, it's his show. He should be the one in charge going, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this. But he kind of still looked out of his depth.
Yeah, and so when Scad said, let's do that, and they go, and he just changed his mind just like they're on the spot and said, all right, we'll stay here. It's like, oh, dude, mate, stand up yourself. There's a good one here. Christy made a mention that the spice, in one of the books, that spice can boost mental telepathy. That's Dune. So if it is in the books, I suspect it's going to be one of the expanded universe books. And as Daniel said, yeah, we're not interested in finding the Kwisatz Haderach on Tatooine. So either way, spice did something, and it just wasn't clear as to what that was. And that was definitely a bit of a deficiency in the story. Now, I found this one interesting, right? So Drash says, the people here need our protection. So suddenly, all of a sudden, the mod squad want to hang around and save everybody's lives, right? Remember, these were the baddies originally, because remember, they were stealing water off the spice, the water guy and all that sort of bizzo. Now they want to protect everybody. And I thought, hang on, you're not actually listening to what Boba Fett said. Go to the palace, it's better protected. If you stay in the city, you bring the war to the city, and not only will you have more destruction, and ironically, you do have more destruction, but it increases the casualty risk because you've got civilians everywhere. So, I mean, sure, it looked good visually, and we'll get to that in a few moments, but logically, you're thinking, if there's going to be a war, don't have it in the city, take it out in the countryside or somewhere where no one else is going to be impacted. So the logic of there sort of went out the window a bit. What do you reckon?
Yeah, as we go through this, there is a lot of illogical stuff that I'm going to bring up and go through and maybe suggest how they could have fixed it. But I just don't think it was... Like I said, it was a lot of amazing imagery and amazing scenes. It makes a good trailer, but when you kind of put it all together, it doesn't make a very good, satisfying episode. Not for me.
Yeah, there's definitely some gaps. Andrew said he was taking advice from his trusted advisors. Why would they be classed as advisors? I mean, what experience would they have? Realistically, he's actually been seen more, as in Boba Fett, seen far more combat than any of the mod squad, right? So it would make sense that they should listen to him, not the other way around. Just because they live in Mos Espa is irrelevant. So, yeah, I wouldn't class that as a trusted advisor. I mean, an advisor is someone with experience, and the mod squad have got no experience whatsoever, aside from stealing water off the water guy. So, yeah. Anyway,
the other thing there is they give the exposition of what everyone in their little band is doing and how they're going to manage it, and then you pull back and you see the mayor's major domo is sitting behind them. I didn't think he was on their side. I thought, what if he has a transmitter? What if he goes and tells everyone the plans? I thought that was a dumb plot point.
So as the group are talking, the major domo starts walking closer and closer and closer to him. He's got the mic in his chest. You know, it's like the flower thing with the microphone. I'm just going to try to get it. Sorry, just excuse me. I'm from Coruscant, and I'm just trying to get a better signal.
When did he become a trusted confidant?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and you are right, Michael. Trusted. Yeah, how long have they been together? Been together? Exactly right. Yeah. And you're right. He's still a prisoner. So that's a very, very good observation. The major domo, because he was clearly devoted to the mayor. Good old Mock Shies. So yeah, it did that. That was definitely something. They could have been turned around and go, like, he's disappeared, and go, where'd the major domo go? And he's running off back to the Mos Eisley to talk to the guys. Guess what's going on, fellas? And as it turned out, that led into this sequence. I actually like this. I thought this was a good bit, right? It's not very often you get scenes where it's just all aliens and there are no humans whatsoever. So you got the Pikes. Mock Shies has finally made a reappearance, and of course, Cad Bane turns up, right? And I always respected the fact that from the Pikes' perspective, they were looking at it from a purely business arrangement, right? They want to just run their spice and do all their bizzo. They're not interested in wars. They're not interested in planetary takeovers. For them, it's all about the business. And I really like this. I thought this was actually a really good sequence. The thing that I found interesting, as we found out from our correct prediction from a few episodes ago, the Tuskens weren't killed by the Kintan Striders, as we alluded to. It was actually the Pikes who did it. And remember, I think we just sort of discussed this about 3 or 4 episodes back. They were set up. So in effect, Boba Fett destroyed these guys for nothing, the motorcycle gang. But someone had suggested, what if it was Bane who killed the Tuskens instead? And that would give that scene where he meets up with Fett later on a lot more weight. Where, you know, imagine the two of them are looking at each other off and said, oh, you didn't protect the Tuskens. I killed them all. It would have just been added an extra dynamic to the story. But either way, the Pikes killed the Tuscans and set up the Kintan Striders, and we were 100% accurate on that. So there you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And I found, I don't know if you noticed on this, right? So good old Mock Shies has ended up being like Lando Calrissian, right? This deal's getting worse all the time. He says, I don't want to blow stuff up. I don't want to war. I'm still in charge of the city. But it's like, dude, you are losing power left, right, and center. And I don't know if you drew parallels with that, but I certainly did. So Paul Shies is it's not going to end well for him. What do you think?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I did find it interesting, the whole meeting up together. He does not seem high enough up the food chain to be in amongst the crime lord gangs. He's sort of more of a puppet that smooths things over, in my opinion. He doesn't seem to be a hard bit gang leader, just a mayor that's in the bureaucracy of it all.
Well, he's a politician. That's really what it comes down to. He didn't. I mean, the idea being, even though ironically, Tatooine was a bit of a rough and tumble place, throughout the Empire and whatever else, there could be sections of it that are relatively normal, I suppose. And he's just been elected as a politician. He's got his major domo and all those sort of dudes looking after him. Doesn't mean he's doing a good job. And as mentioned, even though he's the mayor of Mos Espa, they've got the three groups looking after their respective areas. So maybe it is mayor by name, but not in action. And he's got to pay his dues with all the groups just to keep the peace, just as what's her name? At the Sanctuary Canteen, he used to have to do Gaza. So, yeah. I like this one from Daniel. Yeah, from Star Trek. Rule of acquisition number 34. Say war is good for business. Yes, I am. Yeah, exactly right. Good stuff. Well done. All right, so we get to this bit, right? There's an X-Wing. There's a ship approaching X-Wing class, and no guess as to who this belongs to after last week's episode. And of course, just like that, ka-ching, ka-ching, warm up the cash registers. Guess who is back? What do you reckon?
Well, last week we were doing the count of how bad Jedi are. Luke could not even bring a child, or he couldn't bring Ahsoka bring the child. I thought that was another one of these plot points that's a bit of a flaw. This is like R2-D2 is the Uber driver, and you hire an Uber driver and you get your toddler and say, take them to this garage in Werribee, and I think the person in the garage knows his uncle. And this is from a different star system.
Yeah, you're right. It's an interesting one, and I like this one from Gavin when the X-Wing's approaching. Yeah, the plane. Yeah, well done. So you're absolutely correct. Right now, someone had asked, does Luke even know that Grogu is there? Because it's possible that Grogu said to R2, I've got to go back to Din, stick me in the ship, and R2 can just fly him there, right? And of course, there is an argument, as you just said, why didn't Luke bring him? And clearly the reason is easy, budget cuts. There's not enough money to do another digital Luke Skywalker in this episode, right? Because then you got to bring Luke in and he's got to explain who he is and why he's there and all that. Too hard. Just chuck the kid in the ship, get R2 to fly the ship, land it, and Grogu gets out and we can just move on. But it does, you are completely correct. It's like, okay, one, did Grogu leave of his own accord? And if not, did Luke just chuck him in and said, fine, you've taken your chainmail, piss off, and just let him go? And you do wonder the logic behind it. It doesn't add up. And that's the reason why I think they just said, we can't do Luke in 2 episodes. It's just too expensive. Because last week...
How did R2, I guess, know to take him to the garage? Do they know that she's their friend? Or why do they go there?
Well, you can only assume that when Din was with R2 in the previous episode, somewhere along the way, there's been a communication. And he said to either Ahsoka or R2, because he's got given them the chainmail, if you want, give him the kid the gift. But if he wants to find me, this is where I'll be. Because they landed the ship directly in Palimoto's garage, if you will, rather than just some random spot. So I can only assume there's somewhere there. He left his calling card to say, hey, this is, if you want me, this is where I am. And that's what it was all about. But yeah, the absence of Luke was a really big surprise. And of course, someone then asked, if R2 units can fly all the X-Wings, then why do you need pilots anyway? So if you're going to have a battle of the Death Star, just don't put the pilots in the ships, just get the robots to do all the work. So anyway, so there you go. So yeah, even Daniel asked about which R2 to hang the land in. That's what we have to assume that Din told them. Okay, so here's my calling card. This is where you got to go. Did Grogu tell R2 about it? Yeah, exactly right. So, but yeah, and the fact that R2 just wants to ditch a kid and bugger off, maybe that's because Luke doesn't know. Now, if that's the case, then Luke's going to wake up from his snores, wake up and go, "Where's my new student?" Oh, he's pissed off back to Tatooine. It's like, whose idea was that?
and Yoda's lightsaber's missing, and his chainmail.
That's where you say, R2, you're about to lose your third leg, son. So make of that. Anyway, so Grogu turns up, right? And whether it be a good thing or a bad thing, it was unbelievably predictable. We've said it for ages, right? And he's the cash cow of the series. Bang, he's back in the series. The thing that I laughed at is Pelly says Grogu is a terrible name. We have said that since the day it was announced in The Mandalorian. It is a shithouse name. No one can pronounce it. No one likes it. People prefer Baby Yoda, even though he's not even close to being a Baby Yoda. It's just echoing what fans have been saying for months now. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I did also wonder how she could suddenly communicate with him, but then I worked out on rewatching it, R2-D2 was telling her things, so that's how.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep, everyone agrees. Yeah, I said Yogu originally because I thought you had Yaddle Yoda and Yogu would have worked, but I mean, Yoga just sounded a bit cockeyed, but it's better than Grogu. No one got Grogu. And as we said last week, even as you've said, as a collector of merchandise, the merchandise doesn't even have his name. It's just always been the child. So there you go. Hang on. Hang on. So, Tracy, you mentioned that you made the choice between the lightsaber and the chainmail. He made a choice and Luke respected that. No, we did not see that at all. He just said, choose, bang, one or the other, end of the episode. Well, we did not see what he chose, and we did not see what Luke's reaction was. So, but we as fans guessed it pretty quickly, and as it turns out, we were correct, which we'll come to very, very soon. You are right. Yogurt, from Spaceballs. Well done. Now, this one I had a bit of a laugh at, right? Now, we've seen before that Grogu loves eating live food. Right now, clearly his species is used to doing that. So does that mean that Yoda used to eat live food? And if he did, what did he feed Luke on Dagobah?
Well, I think Yoda had all those snakes around for a reason, didn't he?
Yeah, well, that's right. So, I mean, we know that he was cooking something and, Luke takes a bite and goes, "Ooh," screws his face up. Imagine he was still wiggling and jiggling. I had to laugh at that. So there you go. Tracy said, we assuming he chose the male. Yeah, we did. But in our last episode last week, we explained why he chose the male, why we guessed that, and we guessed correctly. So we didn't just say he chose it. We had to explain why. And then we did that in the last episode. So it was a bit of a no-brainer in the end. And as it turned out, we were right. Good old Grogu's back. Yay, team, party, party, party. Now, this I did like. All right, a great citywide vista. And I got to admit, Mos Espa, and we have discussed this, has grown a lot since the old Phantom Menace days. But I thought in terms of just the visuals, I just want to chuck this in because I thought it just looked really, really grouse and really spectacular, and it's a really nice place. It's sort of taken over from Mos Eisley, which used to be the go-to place for Star Wars fans on Tatooine, but there you go. And, of course, in the story, our heroes, they're all in position in the three respective areas, looking unbelievably conspicuous, and you've got to ask yourself, what could possibly go wrong? Do you reckon the three groups are going to align themselves with Boba Fett, or do you reckon they're going to align themselves with the Pike Syndicate, a highly advanced, well-established crime group, or just some random dude who keeps taking his bloody helmet off? How do you think that was going to turn out?
Well, I think the series from this point on does the thing that I don't like about a lot of movies and series. I guess one that comes to mind recently is the first Suicide Squad, where you assemble a band of against the odds heroes or against the odds gang to fight something, and you think over the series they should learn together to work together and execute a plan, and then at the end it's just like, get them, and it all kind of falls to pieces from here, I think.
Yes, indeed. I'm just going back up the messages. Christy made a point of saying, how come everyone can now understand droids? You're right. They've gotten around this particular problem. You don't need C-3PO anymore or protocol droids. Everybody seems to understand who's talking to who and all the rest of it. And they've simplified things a bit, probably for just to save time and effort. But it is kind of cheating. So there you go. Like this Grogu chose wisely. Yes, indeed. And you are, hang on, there was a classic. Gregor said, Dagobah was an all-day smorgasbord for Yoda. Well, yeah, right. If he was eating live food, everything that's flying around, you go back there 6 weeks later and there's just nothing there anymore because he's chowed down the whole lot. So there you go. All right, so they chose badly. Absolutely.
Yoda does actually say to Luke when he tries his food, how you get so big on this, I don't understand. And that's because you have to eat, the live stuff to get as big.
Who taught you to say quotes? How do you get so big eating food of this kind? Dude, what kind of nerd are you? Get your quotes right, son. There you go. Could end up in Family Feud. All right, so Cad Bane comes back, right? Which is kind of groovy. And they're talking about back shooters, right? Who's got back shooters and whatever else. And of course, a lot of people thought, oh, mate, when these dudes pop up here, right? Is it going to be Bosk and Dengar and Zukas and all those guys? Because people have been hanging out to see the bounty hunters from the Empire Strikes Back return. And it was just the general Pike guy. So I guess there was a few sad faces from the fans when that occurred, which is a bit unfortunate. But this is where Cad Bane and Boba had their bit of a gas bag, and that's when we learned that, like we already knew that the Tuskens were killed by the Pikes, not by no, that's not right. Yeah, by the Pikes, not by the Kintan Striders. And the thing I find, he's only appeared in one other episode, I'll get to in a sec, is that in the series, Boba Fett has been upstaging Fennec Shand. Din, who appeared in the show, has upstaged Fennec, but Cad Bane upstages everybody. And he's just the coolest cat in town. What did you want to say, Alden?
I was just going to say, it's another one of the problems with people having expectations of the bounty hunters. When you've already had major returns in the previous 2 episodes, you set people's expectation even higher for the last episode, and then when nothing new turns up and nothing like that happens, it's bound to be a disappointment for the people who want a Boba Fett related return rather than a Mandalorian one.
Yeah, exactly right. And because we had Cad Bane, who if you're going to beat Bane, you need Batman to beat Bane. Yeah, exactly right. There's a classic joke, that one there. So we sort of move on. I had a bit of a laugh at this, right? They got the comlinks, right? They're all talking on the comlinks. And you might remember a few episodes ago, good old Scat up here had to use a telephone box to ring back to base and go, oh, by the way, the Pikes have just landed. It's like, why don't they use the comlink in this place?
I mean, they've even got rid of telephone boxes here. They really kept them on Tatooine.
Unbelievable. Because remember in that episode, if you want to go back, for those who want to go back all those episodes ago, we actually said, why is he using a phone box? It's like that. They have comlinks. And sure enough, in this episode, they got comlinks. It's like,
what happens every time they put up a mobile phone tower, the Jawas take it down and scavenge it.
Yeah, it may be too. All right, so everything goes to the shares, right? All the 3 groups who've been looking after Mos Espa, they decide to rebel against our heroes. A complete no-brainer. If you want to think of predictability in this episode, it comes in spades. You can pretty much predict just about all of it when you sit and think about it. And the thing that I found funny, right, is you got the Aqualish guys. They turn on our mod squad people. And I thought they all pull out these little pissy little guns. And I thought, how come with all these modifications they've had included, none of them thought to include weapons? Like get the arm and the old big, like the battle droid machine gun. I thought there was an opportunity that got lost. What do you think?
I think they spent all their credits on mirrors for their bikes.
Yeah. A bit of extra shoot and shine. So, all right, the Aqualish stuff's going down. Then we go over the Trandoshan area, which is where Chrysanthemum's hanging out. And the thing I found funny is like, okay, we're still using knives and swords. I thought, didn't these guys look at Chrysanthemum? He's carrying a big-ass blaster rifle. That is not going to end well for some of them.
It is one of those things that happens in horror movies where, you know, you have the bad guy who is good at hand-to-hand combat and will stab you, and instead of standing 100 meters away and everyone just firing, they go, let's all get in and go stacks on. That is not going to end well, is it?
No, exactly right. Now, Tracy said back here, she jumped the gun a little bit. Poor Gamorreans. With that in mind, I couldn't help but think of the old Die Hard quote. I guess we're going to need some more Gamorreans. Yeah, they sort of went down. They literally went down fighting, didn't they? So it didn't end well for those guys, but oh well.
I was really disappointed they didn't put up more of a fight, or at least pull a couple of the other guys down with them. We've seen the Gamorreans, you know, are in hand-to-hand combat in wrestling rings. They couldn't like pull something out and like do some moves to at least make it look like they were fighting better than they were. And then I did think there might be the Back to the Future sort of trick where they fall off and they go to look over and they rise up again because someone saved them. But no, the poor little piggies splattered.
Yeah, it didn't end well for him. So of all the heroes that have got to bite the dust, the Gamorreans are the ones that went. Now, this is something I didn't pick up on, someone else picked up on, but a few people noticed it. Regardless of how much money they spent on this series, there's always time for budget cuts, right? Now, if you look at the Aqualish guys on the right-hand side, they've got hairy arms, right? And you might even remember this from A New Hope when the guy, Ponda Baba's arm got cut off, hairy arms. But this dude who fell off the cliff, he's got human hands. Well, how obvious is that? I couldn't put gloves on the poor bastard. He's the guy who falls out of the thing, out of the roof. What do you reckon of that?
Yeah, he was half human on his mother's side.
Absolutely love it. And regarding the comm links, Tracy's gone for the Nokia 230, Nokia 3210. So there you go. Yeah, whoops. It's so obvious. I go, oh my god! And a few people picked up and said, "Why has he got human hands?" But as you said, maybe he was a sort of like he's a dual breed sort of dude. So there you go. Now we get back to the serious part of town. So everybody sort of Mickey whooped off everywhere. Shit's going down, and it's Boba and Din stuck in the Sanctuary Cantina. And that's when Boba makes a reference about the fact that the Creed is bantha fodder, and he's kind of glad that things are going to change. So Din's sticking around. Well, you knew you would for the big battle scene. The two guys are there. What are they going to do? Right? Everything's going to their plan is complete tripe at the start of things, really. And I thought this was particularly interesting because, as we've discussed, the creed that Din is following is crap, right? The old thing of leave your helmet on all the time and this is the way and all that. And as we've discussed, it's not the way at all. So it might be suitable for this particular sequence, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense.
The thing that I didn't get, the series could have been a lot shorter if the Pikes just came down with a ship and sent 2 missiles into the cantina and nuked it.
Yes, and I thought about that after, and I agree with you. And I thought about it afterwards. I thought because they arrived on private public transport, maybe they have no planes flying around. But you would think to protect their own train and loads of spice that they would have ships flying around. Yeah. It's questionable, isn't it? But yes, I agree.
The other thing, like I didn't really appreciate their sort of tactical response of like walking slowly down the middle of the street to the sanctuary where they've got 2 guys who are crack shots inside, and then Boba Fett and the Mandalorian didn't like take advantage of like shooting them.
Yeah. No, we'll get to that in a sec. So don't get too excited. We are sort of just slowly working our way through this, and you are right, Michael. The way is flawed, as we've discussed and discovered. Someone pointed out Fett might be slow on the draw, as was pointed out by Cad Bane, but Jesus, the fastest hand writer in the West. He just writes this thing out, and he says, "There you go, out you go outside." And of course, in the end, this was unbelievably dumb. It was unbelievably predictable, and worst of all, it was overly long. We get it; it's a distraction sequence, but it was like, did it need to be as long as it was? And it was like, and of course, he has to do the whole thing. I'm from Coruscant. You wouldn't know it. I've got training in this and this. And what the hell was all that about?
Yes, if you're a true fan, you'd have picked it up straight away from his accent.
Very, very good. All right, so we get outside, right? So the dudes come flying out, which I got to admit was a pretty cool bit. The Din and Boba come flying out, which is great. And you see all the toys, everything's making an appearance, right? So the knee darts are making an appearance. The whispering birds, which I call the whistling Dixies, make an appearance. There's shit going off absolutely everywhere. And you are completely correct. All the dudes are coming out from one direction only, right? It's all great. And then just when it's about to end badly, the reinforcements arrive, and it's just one carload of dudes, right? One carload from Freetown. That's as far as it goes. And of course, they all sit right behind it. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, one well-placed grenade, or as you said, a rocket launcher from a ship would just finish off everything. And of course, I looked at it, I thought, why did the Pike guys just go from the back or from the side? Jesus.
There seemed to be enough of them there to outflank them, so they could have easily done it. I just thought it looked great. You saw Boba Fett and Mandalorian fighting together, and they're going to have this showdown in the street. And I was thinking, they're doing a homage to a Western. They're not thinking of Star Wars universe with backpacks and ships and rockets and things like that.
Well, personally, what I think it is they've kept it simple. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So I just want to point that out to everybody. They've kept it simple purely for a younger audience, so they don't have to sort of process all this stuff. The bad guys are in front of me. The good guys are here. Easy. Now, once you have dudes coming from the sides and the back and above, it becomes a brain overload. And all of a sudden, our heroes are a real pickle because later on, they do actually take off down the street. And they go, well, why aren't you there in the first place? Or separating it, the whole guerrilla warfare sort of thing. And so the fact they're all staying right behind this one vehicle, which until it blows up, they just stay put. It's illogical, but it's simple. And it's simple storytelling and it's simple visually. And you don't have to over-process what's happening. Because once you start introducing complexity, that then makes it longer and people have to keep tabs. Oh my God, now I've got extra dudes I've got to focus on. So but the downside for people who know this stuff are thinking, my God, this is unbelievably predictable and unbelievably stupid. But something that wasn't predictable was the destroyed Vespa. Cry me a river, I said to myself.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Amy will come and fix them up, won't they?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. All we need is freaking sharks with freaking laser beams. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
I like this one. It looks like a VW Beetle standing next to a DeLorean. Yeah, exactly right. So amongst all of our heroes, so the problem is that once you've got all these characters, you've got to work out where everybody is. What's happening with everyone, right? So the big attack has occurred. We saw Chrysanthemum getting piled onto by the Trandoshans. He finally pops out, and I've got to say this, right? As far as I'm concerned, his nickname should be Timex because he took a licking, but he kept on ticking. And I tell you what, he might be limping and he might be struggling and he's got scars on his head and all that, but he just kept on going.
Yeah, he's obviously one of the new fan favorite characters.
Oh, and well deserved too. I think of a lot of the characters we've seen. You imagine that Chrysanthemum and Cad Bane having a face off. Oh, mate, that would be awesome. I mean, Chrysanthemum is a great character. They've done a really, really good job with him. But it was just funny. I mean, he was chucking dudes everywhere, and he's got the limping thing going on. But sure enough, that's not the end of him. Even when Fett says, "Oh, that's all right, we'll give you a spell in the back to tank." That's obviously enough to give him a juicy fruit because he's picked up and he's ready to party on. So.
It is one of those things as well in Star Wars. Just because he's a Wookiee who's twice as big as other Wookiees by the looks of it, can you really take that much laser fire and keep going?
Yeah, that's that. We see that a lot in this show where the armor and all. It's like, and he's not really armor; he's got armor on the shoulders. And of course, the Trandoshans whack him with all these swords and things. It's like, yeah, that will definitely leave a mark. But you didn't want to kill him. I acknowledge that.
No,
by the same token,
I agree. But there was smarter ways of him being taken a licking than like being shot in the chest a couple of times. You know.
Yeah, you can almost think the Trandoshans are thinking, "Oh, we've got to take this guy down. Oh, man, he's armed with his big ass gun. We've got our knives and swords. Yeah, it's not going to end well for some of us. Some of us aren't going to be going home tonight." So. Yeah. Anyway, it's a bit silly, but it did look good, though, when he reappeared, and suddenly the band was back together. All right, so, okay, the Pikes, they're getting their asses kicked from here to Christmas, and then suddenly they bring out the big guns, literally, in this case, the Scorpionic droids, the big brother of a droideka. And I go, oh, there's some pretty nasty passes. Remember, this is a kitchen sink show, right? Everything's getting chucked in. And, of course, they bring these big puppies out, and away we go.
So I think these have only appeared in a droid encyclopedia before, so they've now been made canon by appearing on the show. The one thing, now I did see this was in one scene, and I think it was meant to be that you saw a Pike activating them with a remote control, and then he steps back underneath. So when they show that, it's like Chekhov's gun. You show something, and then it comes back later, but it didn't come back later, which I was quite surprised by. You know, when all hope is lost, you think someone might go and get that control, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Tracy's made a point about saying about the burning hair of Chrysanthemum. Yeah, exactly right. Yes, exactly right. They didn't know not to bring a knife to a gunfight. Oops for them. And speaking of that, speaking of things that you should have learned that you didn't learn, so the Scorpionics are coming down the street, and our heroes just stay in the one spot. And it's like, don't worry about it. We'll just keep shooting at shields. I'm thinking, guys, didn't you watch The Phantom Menace? It doesn't work. And to make matters worse, they go, oh, okay, we'll shoot a rocket at it. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I'm looking at thinking, dude, that didn't destroy them. They're just going to keep coming right through that. It's like, they have shields, dudes. Come on, get with the program.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, you know, okay, after the first couple of shots, you know, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, exactly right. And I was just mentioning Chrysanthemum a few moments ago, right? He's busted. He's got the limp. He's got the slices and the dices. Then he gets his second wind. And look at it. That is a dude ready to kick some bums. What do you reckon, eh? So, and he's running around like a normal guy. So he healed very, very quickly. So I just bring that up. So, but it was a good shot, though. I've got to say, it was a good shot with him. So yeah,
because the Trandoshians and Wookiees are mortal enemies, he wasn't going to be taken down by a bunch of Trandoshians, was he?
Totally agree with you. Michael has said, I thought Grogu and R2 were going to show up in the X-Wing for some air support when they turned up. Well, that's the only thing that's missing from this entire fight is some ships in the air. And, of course, we do know that the Rancor appears later, because when Boba Fett buggers off back to the palace, we think he's going to get his ship, come back, and give him the old seismic charges treatment. Nah.
This is the other thing. If you can get all the way back to the palace and get the Rancor, what's going to be faster and more effective to get back and save your friends? The Rancor or Slave One?
You do wonder, don't you, eh? And you are right, Christy. The bad guys, the Pikes, in this case, have worse aim than Stormtroopers. Totally agree with you. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. But in the middle of a huge fight scene, right? Okay, Chrysanthemum's getting busted up. The Scorpionics are blowing the shit out of everything. There's always time for a car chase. And and there's always some comedy chucked in because you've got the picture right off the side there. They're like hanging off the edge there. So Pelly's just rolled up, hey, Mando, and all this sort of business. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Which then, of course, leads into this moment. And as I've said there, the emotion, what had happened is this destroyed what happened at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Remember, this was only like 7 episodes ago when from the timeline in terms of the series. And that was just a case of warm up the cash registers. And that brings in the bantha in the room. A lot of fans were shitty that Grogu came back to Din, right?
Yeah.
So there was so much I'll get to you in a sec. There's so much emotional investment in the last episode of The Mandalorian where Grogu's gone off with Luke. Din's off on his own. He's got his dark saber and all the rest of it. And then within less than a series of this series, the two have reconnected again. And that's the reason why some people have said The Mandalorian has now been ruined. And we know why they've done it. And we discussed this ages ago, saying, well, Grogu is the cash cow. I mean, regardless of whether about the character and the motivation, he's the one that brings the money in, and he works best with Din, not stuck with Luke on another planet. They've got to be together for the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, right? Yeah. And that's the reason why they've brought them together. But a lot of people and a lot of fans were not happy about it. What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't have had Grogu in this series at all, and I wouldn't have had Luke, and I wouldn't have had The Mandalorian. I would have had this episode that we got as the finale as the episode that we got 2 episodes ago, and not had Grogu come in. And we have this episode, and they don't win. They sort of have this is exactly the same, except they don't kill the bosses, and you don't have Grogu, and they just survive and get back to the palace. And then the last 2 episodes are Boba Fett stepping up, maybe getting the other bounty hunters coming back in. And these 2 episodes should have been where Boba Fett shone. So I wouldn't have had Grogu come back at all in this series.
Yeah, what it's done is completely watered down what was a very important ending to the last series. And it's unfortunate because the reason, the rationale behind it is because these 2 characters work so well together, even though if the narrative, as you said, it's not necessary for them to do that. Some people have suggested it would have been great in The Mandalorian 3rd season to have Grogu training with Luke or wherever he is, Din sort of doing his thing, and then maybe they're thinking about each other or whatever else, but not join them back up again so soon. Because when the 3rd season of The Mandalorian starts, let's work on the assumption you don't watch this series at all, as in the Boba Fett series, you're going to get to the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, right? Grogu's buggered off with Luke, and in the very next episode, they're back together again. It's like, how freaking stupid is that? So, in the first episode of the 3rd season, it's like, that is just dumb. So,
I do agree with you, and it is very clever what Disney has done, because they've set up these characters who are fan favorites, and you can't help but love seeing them. You know, the scenes with them in are great, and it is good to see them, and it is good to see Luke. He looked better this time round. I think everyone agrees with that, but didn't need them in this series. It didn't give the series and Boba Fett, the character, enough room to breathe because it was overstuffed with other characters.
Yep, totally agree. So Tracy agrees with you. As I said, fans are never happy regardless, but in this case, it was a big impact because what you've done is you've now impacted 2 shows, not 1. So if the Book of Boba Fett was a shit show, and it hasn't really been the best, but it was complete crap, The Mandalorian would have gone on regardless. The 3rd season would have been spectacular, potentially. A lot of people would have loved it, whatever else. But from the first episode of the 3rd season, unless they do a going back in time scenario, Grogu has now returned to Din after having just left him. And from a timeline perspective, we're only talking a couple of months, potentially. So from the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian to this episode, it's only been a short period of time. So he's only been gone for like a month, 2 months tops, and then Grogu's returned. So, and you're right. And that's what I said, Angie, it is ka-ching. Because as we said, we were joking about it, but we weren't necessarily making it as a joke. He is the cash cow, right? And already I've seen merchandise for Grogu already starting to come out because he's now reappearing in the series. And it's sad that that's the motivation, but it's the motivation. So there you go. There you go. Oh, we go. Disney should give us a job on the writing stuff. Yeah, we will take out all the things that they want to put in because it works better for the narrative. And they go, oh, the fans will love what we have, but it's shit house in terms of making money for the series. So there you go.
Well, I guess the only thing you don't know, maybe Boba Fett was the secondary show and they have got ideas down the track for The Mandalorian and they're just using this to launch the next series of The Mandalorian without having to do the setup because they've already done it.
Yeah, I don't know. So either way, whatever happened at the end of the last series of The Mandalorian has been completely ruined, and the fans were not happy. And believe me, I was reading all the responses, and they were not the happiest campers in the world. They said, I don't care. As we said in the quote at the start of the series, that person did not give a rat's ass about the Boba Fett series, did not want The Mandalorian ruined, and The Mandalorian series has now been ruined. And that was not me saying that. That was somebody else. So there you go. All right. We'll move on. As we predicted, the chainmail was picked. That was a no-brainer, actually. We picked that from last week, and sure enough, he's wearing it because he couldn't have the lightsaber and become a great Jedi because we don't see him after in the sequel trilogy. So there you go, and it's all good. Anyway, so Boba's buggered off back to the palace, picked up his Rancor, right? And some people have forgotten the Rancor was even back there because we only saw one episode all those episodes ago. Could have got Slave One, come flying around, drop a few seismic charges, but no, we're going to go the old Godzilla route. And remember, we were discussing earlier about don't bring the war to the city because what happens then is you destroy the city. And sure enough, the Rancor's climbing over everything, busting shit up. And it's like, should have gone to the palace, kids. See, who should listen to the Mod Squad? They got no friggin' idea. What do you think?
Yeah, it reminded me of the scene from the Clone Wars with the Zilla monster, which was a homage to Godzilla, but now they've done homage to King Kong. So again, a fantastic, if you take that sequence out of the episode and just watch it as a fantastic action sequence, it's absolutely an amazing sequence. There's nothing flawed about it or technically or anything. Although I did think it was a bit strange that the Mandalorian then tries to ride the Rancor. It doesn't work. So instantly they all try and start killing it.
Yeah, well, it is a raging beast, and they wouldn't have known it was the Rancor belonged to Boba, but there you go. So we're into big monster battles now, right? Now, what I did like about the Scorpionic droids, it went the full T-800, from Terminator, had the red eye and everything. It just will not die, right? It just battles on to the end, and I like that. I like that a lot, actually. So the battle scene was actually really full on, really well done. Big monster versus a big machine. It was pretty groovy, and I thought, straight out of a Street Fighter, or finish him and rip him apart. And as you said, there's some awesome scenes with this, and some really, really great cinematography. It looks spectacular. But I thought we've spent all this time destroying this Scorpionic, but there's still one more. So the battle scene wasn't finished yet. What do you think?
I thought it was a bit frustrating because logic kind of went out at the window. As soon as they got the shield down, Mandalorian went in with the Darksaber and swung it once, and then the Darksaber magically disappeared and didn't appear again. What happened there?
Yeah, exactly right. And it was just ironic that he should give it a burl against the shields, and he's got to stick it through the head and all sort of bizarre. So I guess it's the kitchen sink. We had to see everything, and the Darksaber was one of them.
The other thing that didn't make sense, we talked earlier when the shields were up, the villagers sat there and just shot and shot and shot, doing nothing. As soon as the shields went down, they stopped shooting. Like they were sitting there like stunned mullets. I thought that was quite, I don't know. I thought there would have been, just if they'd gone and done one more pass on the script, I think it could have been a much better sequence. The second one should have been taken down by the Black Chrysanthemum because after he got back there, he really did nothing.
Yeah, this was one of those moments. The heroes are hiding behind a wall. These guys are just standing there like stunned mullets doing their thing, and the heroes got on this lady here and Drash get up there and they're shooting. And it's like, haven't you guys learned the shields will not go down? And it's like we're at a stalemate. And it's like all the heroes in one spot. It's almost like a no-brainer, right? And as we said, the rocket grenade, anything could have just gotten through it all. But once again, it was simplicity. It's intended simplicity for people to sort of get a feeling as to what's going on. And of course, it allowed for another big ass battle, right? So the thing I noticed on this, I don't know if you picked up on that, because in the first battle, the Rancor gets stab wounds from the first Scorpionic, but in this, his wounds seem to be they're magically healed, so he carries a bit of spray on back to wherever he goes. But it did look good, and the idea that Boba was riding the Rancor and all that sort of stuff, it was great and wonderful. But you are right; it's the downside of producing a really bad guy, in this case the Scorpionic droids, is like, how do you get rid of them, right? If rockets can't kind of destroy them, and as Din says, well, the weapons are too powerful and the things are too fast and whatever. What do you do? And it's almost like you got to scratch your head and go, well, okay, we need to bring the Rancor in, because if we bring the Slave One, that's not going to do it. So you create a problem, you then solve the problem, but then you create another problem solving the problem. Does that make sense? So anyway, it made for good.
Look, the good thing, I'm being negative about the story. The production was fantastic. A lot of the scenes, especially when the shields were down, remind me of Harryhausen stop animation with the giant scorpion going up against another giant monster. So seeing that is fantastic, especially just on TV. but it'll look fantastic at the cinema,
Yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah, hiding behind the world's strongest clay walls. It's funny. They're just sitting there shooting. It's like, well, just keep going, guys. You've got a scorpion. Just stick his beak in there and just let him have it out, whatever. So,
if only they'd made the Death Star out of clay.
Yeah, exactly right. See, it would have solved everybody's problems. All right, so here we go. The Major Domo hooks up with Pelly, and I don't know if you noticed this, but he's touching her all the time, so he's clearly got an attraction to her. It's a new romance, and of course, now I know you're going to say something about this. She says, "Oh, nice head tails, cutie," or something like that. And of course, for those who don't know, a Twi'lek's head tails are actually called leku. But there's something you wanted to bring up about this? Is that right?
Well, she actually said, she used it, I thought, as an insult, kind of. She called him tailhead, which is actually towel head. Is an insult for Arabs, and I thought, with sand people, and there's been criticism before. I thought that was a bit close to the line. It is meant to be in jest, but I did think, I wonder if there'll be people that pick on that up on that and run with it.
Yeah, but he took it as a pseudo compliment. So, but it's an interesting observation, though. The fact that she didn't know that they're called leku. I mean, there are Twi'leks all over Tatooine. So, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just a small thing. Yeah, you can't have a Rancor sequence without a Rancor chewing down on a dude, because as you know, busting up cities is angry work. So, that was a nice hark back to good old Return of the Jedi, and it's particularly groovy. And then we finally get into probably the key moment of the show. Good old Cad and Boba Fett meet up for a second time. And I thought, wouldn't it have been interesting? And of course, you won't do this because it's clearly breaking the rules of predictability. Wouldn't it have been interesting if Cad had have killed Boba? Right now, he gets close, obviously.
Yeah.
But what if they did the draw and Fett dies? And that's his out of the series. That's it. Fett as a character is dead. Din comes back and goes, "Oh my God!" It's like, no, that sort of thing. Knocks Bane off himself. Would that have been a good twist?
I actually thought they were going to do that, just the way that Boba Fett had not been as big a player in this series as I thought. And I thought it was going to show that, he dies with honor rather than becoming a crime lord. It didn't happen, I guess. I was a little, Cad Bane is an amazing character and he looks fantastic. I was a little bit disappointed by him being in it for just 2 episodes. Like I said, I wish they had not had the last 2 and this whole story had been more of a story arc. What would have been fantastic and set up a much better confrontation at the end if Cad Bane had revealed he had been hired by the Pikes and killed the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier.
You stupid idiot! You went and killed the Nikto tribe, and it was me. We've been pulling the strings all along.
So how does it work if somebody learns about that and go, do you realize that your leader of Mos Espa actually went and massacred these Nikto dudes? And they hadn't done anything. They were innocent, right? Yeah. It didn't do his due diligence and didn't do his crime scene investigation, bizzo. And just because there was some clues left on the tents that they were there, he just assumed that they'd done it. And of course, he didn't do it at all. So that's like law school 101, effectively. So
no one liked the Niktos anyway.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's completely true. But still, it's not a good look. And I was thinking, was he thinking at the time, oh, shit, I just killed all these dudes and they were innocent. They didn't do a damn thing. So, but yes, it's so the bottom line is that poor Cad Bane arrived last week and he's gone this week. Now there's been arguments as to whether he's dead or not and all the rest of it. You would have to assume until you learn otherwise that he is, because he's left in the street. And you can't imagine he's just going to, after everybody nicks off and leaves the body there, he just suddenly wakes up and goes, oh, yeah, I'm getting better. But, yeah, whether it was a good ending or not, I don't know. What do you reckon?
I think after the build-up over multiple series and the big reveal in this, I did think it was a bit of a cop-out to kill him after just 2 appearances. There was that ticking sound that some people have said was his life support going out, and other people have said will be something that saves him. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back, to be honest.
Yeah, as I say, no one ever stays dead in the show forever, as we discover later on in the end credit sequence. And you are right, Christy. The Niktos were the red herring, but we picked it up pretty quickly. We in our episode we said, "What if they didn't do it?" And they were set up, and it turns out we were right. They're good a week. And they did someone to someone at some stage. Well, we see them toss these station. They're arrogant shits. But whether they were murderers, if they were not murderers, then Boba Fett is a murderer himself. So. Interpret that, and he was a murderer of a lot of people. Actually, he killed a lot of the Nikto guys, not just 1 or 2. So there you go.
Well, Cad Bane did say, I know, and this is like Captain Obvious stuff. He goes, I always knew you were a cold-blooded murderer. He was been a bounty hunter most of his life. So, yes.
Yeah, and I did like it that even Cad had asked Boba Fett, what's your angle? You know, because like we're with the audience when they're saying the same thing, like in the first episode, like, why has he changed so much? It's like it's almost like he's speaking what the fans were thinking. So, yeah, I don't know.
This is the trouble with the series. After the whole series, I still am not 100% convinced I know Boba Fett's angle.
Yeah. You are right, Christy. Yes, the moisture farm, they did kill a couple of people there. So, yeah, maybe it's, you can say, well, okay, they didn't kill the Tuscans, they killed the moisture farmers and probably some other people. So, yeah, whether they were all implicated in that is another thing. But, yeah, good point. And you are, Tracy said he'd like to use the gaffy stick. Yeah, it's a nice hark back to the Tuscan Raiders. And some people did actually suspect that the Tuscan warrior woman who's been missing for episodes would reappear here. And I was waiting for it. Actually, I thought, well, she's the missing link. We know for a fact that she wasn't shown in the dead group, right? The leader was gone, the kid's stick was found, but she was missing. And I thought, wouldn't it have been interesting if she reappeared in this? But obviously wasn't to be. So, yes, very, very good. Maybe taken out for water. Nyctos were taken out for ignoring water restrictions. Yes, well, they did leave the fountain running. That's true. Meanwhile, back in Mos Espa, the Rancors decided to do his King Kong moment. And I suppose everybody is certainly entitled to it. I mean, I did find it funny. It's like, why the hell is he climbing this thing? I mean, what's up there? I mean, King Kong climbed the Empire State Building because we know the connection there because of what it was like in his home island he lived on. And, of course, they're flying the planes around trying to shoot him. But there were no planes flying around for years.
I did actually think the two Republic, that patrol were going to swoop down and it was going to take a swing at them, and they were just going to go, nah, that's a local issue, and sort of bugger off again.
Yeah, exactly right, Adzi. It was a King Kong moment. It was, and everybody's just watching it. I think, oh my God, look at him just climb this spire, which is fantastic. So Grogu gets his knob. I had said in the last episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, Din should have just given the knob to Grogu there and then because he always had this connection with it. So it was a lost opportunity then, but he gets his knob now. So good old, and you were thinking, Grogu's going to save the day, right? He can't just sit idly by, even though everybody says, stay safe, stay out of the way, don't get involved to the kid. And yet the kid is clearly the thing that's going to fix up everything. And, of course, that's pretty much what happened. So you knew nothing bad was going to happen to anybody. But with that in mind, when the Rancor picks up Din and shoves him in his gate, which I thought was kind of funny, I thought, wouldn't it have been interesting if his visor was cracked by the tooth? Yes. It's that, oh, my God, you can see part of my face scenario, a bit like what happened to Captain Phasma in The Last Jedi. I reckon that would have been interesting because even though the helmet's Beskar, the visor wouldn't be. And I thought if you're going to break something, that would be kind of groovy. That would be a threat to Din. It was like, oh my God, this thing is actually getting through the defenses. What are your thoughts? I'm
pretty sure the visor is transparent aluminum, so that's pretty strong too.
That's a freaking Star Trek reference, idiot. Jesus Christ, where you going? I like this one. Who's going to play Faye Ray? Well, the only female we've got in this show so far is Drash and Pelimoto, so you can take your pick out of those two.
Yeah.
All right. So the Rancor's doing its thing, and Grogu comes on the scene. It's going to be a Beauty and the Beast moment, which is absolutely fantastic. And the thing I thought was funny, he puts because I thought, is he going to kill it or what's he going to do? And of course, he puts it to sleep, and it's a very cute moment. But I did think later on, because considering that Grogu eats live animals, I thought maybe he's just looking at the Rancor as a rump steak, thinking, I'll just put you on ice for now. What do you reckon?
So there's a couple of things with Grogu. Now we know that he's not going to become a Jedi. What I thought might have been really cool, when he was seeing the Mandalorian get roughed up, if he'd done the whole Rey where she saw like Chewbacca getting taken away and had used Force Lightning and just everyone would have gone, oh, wow, what's happening here? But he went the other way and put the Rancor to sleep, which I guess is more in line with how Disney want the character of Grogu to be. It's not a very challenged character, is it? It's a one-note character.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Rancor is clearly a threat at this point. In another story, in something a little bit less predictable, Grogu would just go, and the Rancor's dead. His neck just goes snap. It would make an amazing moment of sitting. It's like, wow, this kid is really powerful. But yeah, clearly kids watching the show are going to be going losing their lunch over that. So that's not going to happen. So
did you notice they used the same music for this when he was raising the mud horn with the Force as well, and then of course the Force drains him, so he needs a bit of a nap.
Yeah, exactly right. Michael said Rancors are Force sensitive according to the EU books. The EU books mean nothing at all. They are all legends. It's swearing as far as I'm concerned, so don't swear in this show, Mr. Michael. They do not exist, so we move on. I'm just stirring you, but yes, the EU doesn't count anymore. Grogu taming the Rancors is crocodile. Yeah, it is. I suppose it's a crocodile Dundee moment, which is good. And Christy said, yep, I'll eat now and eat you later. And when Boba's looking for his Rancor later on, he walks into the palace and there's Grogu with his huge gut. He has enormous thing just chowing down on this thing. It's like, he has the old the burp as you have from outside of the palace. And it's like, oh, wouldn't that be a great sequence? So there you go.
Well, you do know that Jabba's palace has a great kitchen. You're going to see some antics of Grogu in there for sure.
Yeah. Tracy said about Ahsoka being a female. I was referring to characters in the show in this episode. Ahsoka didn't turn up. Somebody said, "Oh, is Ahsoka going to make an appearance here?" I think, "Oh my god, there's like everybody's turning up." It's like, is that so? If Luke had turned up, Ahsoka had turned up, it would have been just you're right. It would have been need to be 2 episodes. It just would have been a mind spin. It's like, oh my god, there's just so much shit going on, and it would have been too easy. I mean, the Ahsoka and Luke together, the Pikes have got no chance. So anyway, all right. So the battle's sort of been won. It's all great and wonderful. We've forgotten about Fennec Shand. She's nicked off the Mos Eisley to deal with the heroes. Now, the Pikes are saying we're going to leave Tatooine, right? Business is bad here. We're ready to jump ship. And they've got all the heads of the respective groups around. And, of course, we've got the old sequence where they're all getting killed left, right, and center. And I thought it was great. It was wonderful. But it's like, okay, like Mok Shai's, right? What's he hanging from? And how the hell did she hang him up in the first place? And, of course, where did she get in? Because she shoots the Pike dude from the back or stabs him or whatever. And it's like, you're thinking, where did you come in from all here? It's like, I get the idea you're an assassin and all the rest of it, but unless you can walk through walls, that just seemed a bit.
Well,
if anything, I would have preferred if she had walked in and said, all right, you got 5 seconds to bugger off out of 10. The Pikes bail, and that's it. Not actually have the bloodshed and leave the mayor alive, because realistically, he just made some bad choices. He physically didn't do anything. So what do you reckon?
Well, I spoke to you about this a bit, how I said it was pretty disappointing because you've got the heads of the crime lords and then you've got the heads of the Pike, who is apparently so scary that the Hutts have withdrawn.
Yep.
And you have them taken out so easily. Now, I presume that Mok Shai was taken out like Boba Fett has the cord in his arm that he got Luke with, some weapon like that, I presume, but we didn't really see it. I think it would have been much better and much stronger for the characters of Boba Fett and Fennec if she had gone in and they said, what are you doing here? Like, we were trying to draw Boba Fett out. And they're like, oh, no. You've played into we wanted your forces to be away so I could come in and just kill you all. And then they realize, oh, we've been played, and they all get killed. But it was just, no, she drops in from the roof, kills them all, and that's it. I thought it was a bit of a hollow scene, actually. Cool scene.
Yeah, it didn't really work, because when you see Mok getting, I mean, you're right, she's probably got the cable thing, but like, to suspend someone from the ceiling, you've got to have something up there to suspend them from, like a beam or whatever. And it's like, it just appeared out of nowhere. I mean, I thought it was an interesting way of killing him, really, because most people in these shows get killed outright. But having him sort of dangling there, I thought, oh, okay, that's a bit more gruesome than I would have expected. And because she mentioned earlier about the fact that the spice trade is not necessarily a bad thing, the Pikes, being a business-orientated group, may have said, look, here's a deal for you. What do you think of this? And that then suddenly gives Fennec a bit more depth, because now, instead of just being I'll follow the Boba Fett leader, oh, okay, now I've got a vested interest into knowing what's happening with the trade. Maybe things can be done differently. Maybe if your Pikes nick off, someone else can do the spice trade for you. And that opens up in a completely different dynamic with her character, which at this point has been useless. She's been, like, unfortunately, been really, really, really superficial. Finally give her some depth. But instead she turns up, kills everybody, and walks out the door. And I go, yeah, there could have been more to that. But yeah, I agree. Kept it simple, but wasn't the best for the narrative. I don't think it was. So
it's interesting because I think all the female characters have been shortchanged in this series. Yeah. She is a very, very cool character and been given very little to do. Yeah. And even, all the other female characters in it, Gaza Fripp, very, very cool character, like has the token scene in a couple of episodes and dies. You've got the Mod Squad girl who, again, sort of is the token, I guess she's the de facto leader of the Mod Squad and gets a 1 or 2 lines. I would have really liked to have seen, if they're going to do episodes without Boba Fett, I would have rather seen Fennec Shand goes on a mission or something like that.
No, I totally agree with you. So it could have been done differently and had a bit more depth in this last scene where Fennec finally gets to shine, but instead she just kills everybody, walks out the door, and is like, yeah, okay. And the irony being, of course, the Pikes were preparing to leave. And I was thinking, oh, okay, she's going to be outside and watching them all go, okay, we're done. But no, kills them all anyway. So anyway, so at the end of it all, the new king is walking amongst the peasants, right? And of course, I first thought of, okay, all the leaders of the districts have been killed off. Who's in charge of those guys now? And the reason why I've circled this guy on the right-hand side, I couldn't help myself. I did laugh when I saw this, right? If you've ever watched extras working in movies, one of the worst things you can do is try and overact, right? And if you watch the scene of this guy here carrying this clearly piece of polystyrene, which is meant to be a block of concrete, he's grunting and groaning, and it's like, oh my God, it's just so heavy. And you know for a fact it's only polystyrene. It doesn't weigh anything, but he's just completely overacting the whole thing. So if you go back and rewatch that, say, I laughed. I thought, yeah, that's just extras, because extras, they're just there on set. They just get told what to do. And he says, oh, make it look really convincing. And it looks shit. It really did. It's just, I cacked myself. I was like, yeah, no, dude, not fooling anybody.
Well,
so,
just imagine the takes they couldn't use.
Yeah, exactly right. A Fennec Shan spin-off series, I think, would have the potential to do extremely well. And you could argue, would a Fennec Shan series work better than an Ahsoka series? So you don't need an Ahsoka series, really. But a Fennec Shan one could be quite good, but clearly it's not earmarked to happen. So there you go. So we get to the final scene on Tatooine, right? And I thought this was one of those moments. It was Boba Fett, King Boba, in fact, with his Scooby gang. That's all I could think of them, right? They're all together because they make the comment about the fact that Krasantan gets the melanin, and Scad here says, well, I don't get a melanin, and all the rest of it. So first things first, who's this dude? Why is he there? What the hell's that?
He's the mouse droid that switched himself off.
Yeah, but what's he doing there? Why is he there with them? And he was in the palace. Yeah. What the hell is he doing here? Is he looking for rats? He's the rat dude, right? He's looking for rapid antigen tests. So
the Book of Rat Dude is coming next, so they had to have him in this scene.
Isn't that stupid? So why have we got the rat dude there? And I don't know if you noticed this. Once again, it's talking about how people get work on TV shows, right? These three mod dudes back here have appeared with the mod squad. They have had no dialogue, and they've had absolutely no names given to them whatsoever. They've just been background characters. And the reason, for those who don't know anything about filmmaking, the reason why they had no dialogue is the moment someone speaks on camera, they get paid more. So these three got just lumped at the back, always in the background scenes, never had any opinions, thoughts, views. So when someone said, Drash says, let's do this, or Scad says, let's do that, one of those three could have said, actually, here's a third option. Nah, don't get to do that. And they were just background scenery. So, oh, geez Louise. So there you go. What do you reckon? Yeah?
Yeah, I did think, I thought it was an interesting end to the series, because I did think that the Boba Fett series again was kind of stolen, because we had this series scene where, you know, it's almost like an 80s sitcom where everything's good. They all have a laugh together. They kind of look up to the sky, roll credits, but no, they then cut to something else.
Yeah, totally agree. Christy said, you're right. They're taking the togas were ignored for the most part. These about the female characters, and I totally agree with you on that one. And Tracy said, if they did do a Fennec Shan series, that soften Fennec and ruin her, which much is what they've done with good old Boba Fett. Funnily enough, if the Book of Boba Fett was the Book of Fennec Shan, you do wonder, don't you? And I agree with you, Christy. All the mods, after this massive battle, they still look impeccably dressed, and they're groomed, and they're looking spectacular. So no rough and tumble for those guys. So I totally agree with you on that. We finally end up on the ship. Oh, how lucky was it when Din was building his N1 Razor Crest Mark II that he put the dome in the back? Oh, just for Grogu to sit in. If I recall correctly, we pointed that out back then, saying, oh, there's a spot for the cash cow. I've got to say that I thought it was interesting. Unlike the Razor Crest, like if you want to go to sleep, where do you go? I mean, if the kid's up there and he wants to get something to eat, where does he go? It's good for short trips, but it's not exactly a Winnebago. What do you reckon?
No, I do think it's going to be interesting to see how he goes being a bounty hunter. I do wonder if the next series is set up not a bounty hunter series, but going to Mandalore, finding the water of life or whatever, and it's more
a journey. Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, well, it's more. I think it'll be more of it'll be a departure from what we've seen the first two series of The Mandalorian.
Well, that's a good point, because in the past, in the whole 2 seasons, his main quest was just to find somewhere to handball Grogu off to. Now Grogu is his pet dog. What do they do now? Yeah, right. Does he go back to Mandalore, or does he just say, well, stuff the armor, I'm just going to go on my own adventures? And see where we end up. But what would be good, and I guess it will be revisited, as to whether aspects of the bad guys, whoever they happen to be, try to recapture Grogu again to try and take out midichlorians and some of his blood and whatever else. But that will be just like revisiting old storylines. So I like this one regarding the ship. Andrew said about nappies. Well, I don't think he needs them, but there you go. But where's the toilet? Is exactly right. So it's not the most comfortable ship in the world. Remember, Din lived on the Razor Crest, so he actually slept there and everything. And the N1 is not going to be as comfortable as that. Where would you put a bounty? That is a very good point. You'd have to stick it underneath somewhere. And yeah, you're right, Sue. He does need a better ship. So what he's got is good for short-term trips from here to there, but for long-term journeys, he does need something a bit better. And yeah, Tracy said where you're going to put the carbonite. All right, so the end credits roll, right? And even I got told this. There's an end credit sequence, and it's this. So Cobb Vanth, who we showed you in the still last week, only got shot in the shoulder, right? So he didn't die in the first place, even though in this thing, the Weequay guy says, oh, they shot him in cold blood, which kind of wasn't exactly true. He gets stuck in the back to tank, and the mod dude is Vanth is going to live, and the mod doctor is going to do something to him. But I thought, who really cares? I mean, is Cobb Vanth now like one of the cool characters of town? And I'm not the only one. A few fans have said, so who cares about that? It's like, what's the big deal? Is that the best you guys could come up with? What are your thoughts?
I thought it was a strange scene as well, because you saw the last time we saw the guy that does the mods, he basically doesn't care. He said, you're too old for mods, and then he only does it because he gets a crap load of money. How long on Tatooine would it? Did he die, I guess, is what I'm asking, or did he just get wounded and he's in the back to tank getting mods to fix him up? Because I was just wondering how, no one seems to die. You know, Fennec Shan had her guts blown out, and Boba Fett walks her through and they bring her back to life and mod her. It's like almost cheapens the death and the action.
Yeah, well, once they introduce the survival of Darth Maul from Phantom Menace cut in half, and then he comes back in Clone Wars after you can do anything. But it was interesting because we showed a still photo for those who didn't see it last week, and Cobb Vanth only got shot in the shoulder, right? But the Weequay, the way he says it, sounds like he died. And even I thought, oh, he actually died from that, did he? Oh, there you go. And as it turned out, he's in the back to tank. So make of that what you will. And I thought, if it's a shot in the shoulder, why does he need a mod? Unless they're going to put an artificial arm on him or something. So, but I thought, as a cut sequence, it's like, okay, who really cares? I mean, Cobb Vanth was great and wonderful, but he's not the be-all and end-all of characters. He sits alongside Pelimoto effectively in terms of just background people. So I didn't sort of get that, but no, maybe he'll have a bigger role in whatever future series comes up. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on here regarding the ship. I think there's a classic line here. I've got to say, what happens when you're handing in Ads has said he just hands in the head. Yeah, there's less storage space. This is the ship space issues. I thought it was kind of funny. It goes, Bruce like, what if it's a live bounty? Oh, good on you, Christy, for coming up with pure logic on that one. Absolutely love it. So, very, very good. Speaking of which, we're going to discuss a couple of other things in a sec. But with Christy here, I need to Christy to give us her crimson yawns as to what she thought the last episode was about. Because believe it or not, that's actually the end of the episode, as in like the Book of Boba Fett episode, as well as the season. So, Christy, when you get a chance, send through your yawns. Let us know what you think of it.
I do think it's interesting that we're not sure of the future of the Book of Boba Fett, whether there'll be another one or if this was a one-off. And they've already said that there's going to be 2 series of Cassian Andor.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So Cassian Andor is the, or for those who don't really know or care, is the character from Rogue One, who we know dies at the end of Rogue One. And yeah, they've already announced the second series, even though the first one hasn't even come out yet. And it'd be curious, will they put Grogu in that one? Because as we said last week, Grogu has to, oh my God, Grogu is, Christy's just posted like War and Peace here. Because Grogu's just got to appear in everything because he's the cash cow. All right, so I'm going to cover up half the screen on this. Oh, shit, I can't remember that. This is my personal opinion. The effects were great, but the whole episode was feeling rushed. I just need some yawns. Christy, there's a lot of words here. Just give me how many yawns have you got? Feeling rushed, trying to finish off this one. Badly written and very cliche. Shoot at the OK Corral. Anyone? High Noon. All right. Absolutely. High Noon, never fallen asleep in the series. Too many yawns to count. Oh, jeez. So too many yawns.
That's maximum yawnage.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So that means we have to go for the full. So, Christy, just confirm for me, please. Are you talking about the full 10 yawns? Jeepers creepers. Cop that.
That
There you go.
almost looks like a flag, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does actually. And Sue, you love the movie Rogue One. I'll tell you what, of all the series that they've announced, the Andor series is the one that I am looking forward to. I really want to see it. I'm hanging out because I love Cassian Andor. He's a fantastic character. So, any of your thoughts? Now we got to the end of series, the Book of Boba Fett. Here we go. Yes, thank you for that. 10 plus, a lot of yawns. And what do you want to say about the series that we've just watched, Olson?
Well, I've got something to show. That came in. It came into the shop this week. These came out, and it kind of sums up my opinion of the Book of Boba Fett. Now, this is an action figure that Kenner has released, and it's like a prototype version with the different coloured plastic, and it's in this amazing, flashy, holographic package. But when you look at it, it's got all these bright colours, but when you put it together, it just ain't Boba Fett. And that's what I'm saying about the series. It looks fantastic. It's fun to watch. But for me, it just wasn't the Boba Fett that I thought we were going to get. So overall, this episode, as a piece of television, very watchable, like 8 or 9 out of 10. As the Book of Boba Fett and the wrap-up of the series, just a 5 for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. From the series, I've sort of made my feelings pretty much well known. This episode, believe it or not, I did sort of switch my brain off, and I did actually enjoy it. And I thought, okay, it was unbelievably predictable, as we said, but there was a lot going on. There was a lot to watch, and I did actually find it quite entertaining. That's why I was surprised when a lot of the fans sunk the boots into it really badly. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, it is the kitchen sink thing. It's very, very superficial, but in the end, I was like, I actually didn't mind it that much. And some fans have really loved it. They think it's great and wonderful. But you are right. When you analyze it, there's a lot of flaws. And the whole series has been like that. There's been a lot of discussions apparently behind the scenes, the producers and the writers, and there's just things that haven't worked. And there's been a bit of a hodgepodge and a mess. And as you said, like with the action figure there, it's just been a complete mix up, and it doesn't make sense as to why that happened. Because after the success of The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett should have been just another great series, but the wheels fell off the wagon really early on, and I don't think anybody really knows what happened and what went wrong. So either way, I think history will show that this series will get pushed aside pretty quickly, especially with the other series that Lucasfilm and that are bringing out, which is really great to see. Once the third series of The Mandalorian comes out, the Book of Boba Fett will just get lost in time. And I personally think that they should just let it stop now. Don't do any more. Season 2 finished. Leave it at that. If you want Fennec Shand to pop up somewhere else, fine. You've got Din and Grogu back together, but leave Fett out of it. He's had his time effectively, and they've effectively watered down the character to a point where it's just lost all of his impact, and he's a bit of a pussycat now. So, yes.
Ironically, half the problems in the title, if they had just called it The Streets of Tatooine, and you'd gone into it blind, fantastic series.
Someone actually came up with the name that Tales from the Outer Rim, and I thought, that's a great idea, right? Have Fett, getting out of the Sarlacc, stuff of the Tuscans, great. Move on to somebody else and whatever else. Yeah. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So, there's a question here from Adzi. Question: what level of preconceived idea of the characters impacted your opinion of the storyline? I'll let you answer that one because you're more of the Fett fan than I am.
Well, I'm a big fan, and the thing is, there's a bulk of backstory that's mainly been built up from expanded universe comic books, books, and other things. So I had to detach what I already knew and thought I knew, what they have put out over the years, with what is actually on the screen. Because as Dag said, if it's in expanded universe, it doesn't count. The trouble for me is a lot of the stuff that was in the expanded universe was a lot better and was a lot deeper than what we actually got. So it changed the character 180 degrees to what I thought we were going to get. I thought like The Mandalorian would have been a better template for what Boba Fett acted like if he got out of the Sarlacc pit. So my preconceptions did probably impact on my enjoyment of the series of the Boba Fett character. As a Star Wars series, like I said, I thought it was great.
I would have looked at it that had they could have kept him as a bad guy, so he gets out of the Sarlacc. Maybe he can just still do the thing with the Tuscans, but then returns back to his badass ways. And he's got a real chip on his shoulder now, and he becomes not even an anti-hero, but just a bad dude. And I think because that's what fans had seen him as being for decades, and continued on that way, it would have been great. Whether it would have made for a great story and a great show, I don't know, because it's almost like he's the bad guy, but he's supposed to be the good guy for the series. And of course, as we discussed, There's what happens in universe, and there's what happens for the production based on what the audience's requirements are. And if the audience's requirements are primarily younger people, they can't have Boba Fett kicking the shit out of just about everybody, because young kids won't watch that and parents won't let them watch that. And of course, the kids is where the money is. That's why you have Grogu. So you have no choice. You have to change the character. You got to water him down. You got to make him something that he's not meant to be to bring in an audience. Now, whether the fans like it, clearly they're not going to. But the fans aren't always the target audience. The whole push now is for the future of the franchise, and young people, children, etc., especially, are the future. And that's the reason why characters like Grogu exist, to bring in people from the outside, bring in new fans, even if it damages the way the characters or originally designed characters, how they were meant to be, if that makes any sense. So, yes, and I agree. After the Tusken slaughter, I expected Boba to revert. So, yeah, and Ads agrees as well. Michael says the EU was better written. Well, they had more time for it, obviously, and it went spanned a long, long time. So some parts worked, some parts didn't. But there you go. All right, so that what did you? So yeah, any final words you want to bring up? Because it's something I'm just going to bring up for the future. But anything you thought you want to bring up?
No, I think I've brought up everything I wanted to about this episode. And just as a holistic as a series, I enjoyed it. It was worth watching. Probably won't revisit it as much as some of the other stuff.
Yep, totally agree with you. Sue Cross said, yeah, Christy felt it was a bit weak, and it was. And I think history will be the judge. Like now, people will, we've discovered, people will rewatch Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. I'd be surprised if a year from now someone says, or 6 months from now, someone says, oh, I'm rewatching Book of Boba Fett. It's the greatest thing ever. I just don't think that's going to happen at all. Funnily enough, Gavin, who's watching this series now, hasn't actually seen it yet. So in time, he'll watch it all, and he'll probably come back to us and say, that was his thoughts and views, whether he agrees with us or not. And remember, it's not just us, Aaron and I, saying this. There's a lot of fans saying exactly what we're saying. So, there's the short-term fixes. Oh, it's the short-term high. It was exciting. There's Rancors ruining the city, and it's awesome. It's great. But when the dust settles, then people go, you know what? I've lost interest. It's time to move on. And believe it or not, what they're moving on to is Kenobi, right? Everybody's hanging out for Kenobi. And as it turns out, after tonight, we're obviously not going to be back until May the 30th. Put it in your diaries, kids. Everybody said, nah, shove your Book of Boba Fett. It's up your furry one. We're going off to Tatooine again. Freaking can't get off this bloody planet. And Kenobi is the series that everybody is hanging out for. And I think if Kenobi is successful, and because Mandalorian has been successful, Book of Boba Fett, it really will be just under a boot. And it's just been ground into the dirt. And people are going to say, forget it. No one gives a shit about it anymore. Kenobi is the future. So there you go. So we'll be back on the 30th of May on Monday. So as I said, put it into your diaries or your phones and whatever else, and be sure to join us then. What do you reckon? Yeah, yes, the sand is everywhere, and it gets in everything, as we well know. So there you go. Yeah. Colin has said the series was a giant F for Star Wars merchandise. Well, if you're a Grogu collector, be expecting to buy a lot more of that. And yes, and you are right, Sue. There's a whole universe, and it's all on one planet. It seems to be the Tatooine is the go. So, yeah. Michael said Kenobi don't really care about it. I think you're probably finding in most cases you're in the minority. Most fans are hanging out. Whether it's a great show or not, we don't know yet. But the expectation is there, mainly because Ewan McGregor is going to be in it. And what do you think? Just deviating off the story, Kenobi. What do you reckon?
I agree. We're in an area, although we don't know what's going to happen. We have a good idea of what should happen in this period because it's talked about by the older Obi-Wan Kenobi. Getting Ewan McGregor back, I think, is a bit of a coup for a TV series. Remember, this was originally going to be a movie, and then it turned into a TV series. And it's good that he stayed with the project because you do get some actors that go, "No, I don't do TV." So I'm looking forward to it.
Actually, maybe that's a point. I mean, for those who don't know, when early on in the piece, a few years ago, Boba Fett was going to have his own film. That's when they were doing the anthology movies, right? So you got the Han Solo story, you had Rogue One, and Boba Fett was going to be in the mix. Then they produced the Mandalorian TV series, and then they've said, oh, well, we're not going to do a Boba Fett movie when we've got a Mandalorian series, right? So it is possible that someone somewhere, the powers that be, said, oh, no, quickly rewrite the entire film as a TV series, break it up into 7 episodes, which clearly didn't fit because the story was so short. And maybe that's the reason why the Boba Fett series hasn't worked, because it was originally meant to be a movie and put into a TV series. It didn't work. Obviously, the budget is a lot smaller. You can't visit 10,000 billion planets because you can't afford to do that. and maybe that's the reason why it ended up being a bit of a dog's breakfast, or a bantha's breakfast, so to speak. So there you go. All right, so good stuff. Very good. Yeah, you are right. Yes, Tatooine is meant to be the furthest from the center of the universe on the outer rim, but it seems to be the place where we seem to hang out the most. So there you go. All right, well, we're going to buzz off. I hope we hope you've enjoyed our reviews and discussions of this of the series. Even though we've tend to be a tad critical, we do like to say we'll point out the good things and the things that we're questionable about, and of course justify our thoughts and views rather than just saying that's bad, that's good. And hopefully you've enjoyed what we've had to say. But we're going to buzz off now, and there you go. Should be very, very exciting. Anything you want to add in before we go?
No, just everyone who's watched this, thanks for being along with for the ride, and thanks for all your thoughts and comments, because we are just facilitating the chat about the series we love.
Totally agree. And as we said, it is Valentine's Day, so go up to the one you love, whoever that happens to be, and just talk about Star Wars, because we all love Star Wars. So there you go. All right, we'll leave it to a party hard rock on. We'll see you on May the 30th for the first episode of Kenobi. All right, take care. See you then.
Have a good night, guys.